Keep in mind, like, another appealing factor of why Dex is desirable for a build over Strength, just between Strength and Dex, is that nearly every weapon that you have are going to do more Ash of War damage. Like, we say that, but we exclude, like, the fire ones, right? Because fire ones will do more damage on Strength, so... Except stuff like Flame Strike. And, like, Stormhawk Axe will also do similar damage because it's a boss weapon. But the reason for that is that your Ash of War damage scales off of the one-handed AR. Not one-handed, like... Like, basically, having split damage will net you higher... like, having higher AR will net you more damage, as opposed to, like, when you compare physical and split damage. Usually, like, your weapon that's purely physical, even if the AR is lower, you'll still do more damage because of the way the damage is calculated and the defense, like, splits the calculation in two. Like, usually your pure physical will do more in a lot of situations where you have, like, let's say you have less than 100 AR difference between the pure physical and the split. Then usually, like, it will be at about 100, it's usually pretty even. But if, like, you have, let's say, 500 physical damage versus 550 split, the 550 AR split is going to do less. But on an Ash of War, the Ash of War is going to do more on the 550 split than the pure physical. And the reason for that is that the motion value kind of multiplies. The Ash of War motion value multiplies that number, so the like, your quote-unquote AR gets, like, bigger if you want to look at it that way. So that just makes it so that elemental infusions net you more damage on most Ashes of War. And obviously, when you're talking about Dex, Lightning tends to have better scaling one-handed than Fire does on Strength, and penetrates defense and armor better. So usually you'll do, like, a significant amount of extra damage on your Dex build on Ashes of War compared to Strength. Now, it's a little bit more ambiguous as to, like, if you compare that to, like, a Fate build and a Magic build, because those also have very high elemental. Here I'm kind of on the fence. Either they're completely below. I think I just saw it. Yeah, they're below. Yeah, also Lightning is the best element against over-leveled Phantoms. That's another important one, because if you're dueling, that doesn't really matter, but if you're invading, that's a huge factor. Same thing for the, you know, I'm not talking about the obvious guys, like, yeah, we all know that Rain gets you more lightning damage, like, we're not talking about that, but we're talking about little details that maybe you might not know. But yeah, basically, over-leveled Phantoms, like, we're talking even max-level Phantoms, like 713. For some reason, the way they made the defense in Elden Ring, even if you have 99 in every stat, you're still going to end up with low lightning defense, because lightning defense does not scale off of anything. So for whatever reason, you're always better off doing lightning, unless there's, like, a significant AR difference against an over-leveled Phantom. Wow, insane overshoot. Since this guy is a parry god, let's actually use that. I was trying to hit both. Oh, he was in his menu. The rock kind of blocked us there. Oh, really? Well, sorry, teammate. We used the teammate to bounce off that grenade. It worked. So lightning dex is always better? No, not always. Some weapons have better scaling keen. Like some weapons just have way more AR keen. Like for instance, let's take a look really quickly. Let's compare the damage difference between a keen Urumi. Look at that. Keen Urumi, 522 keen versus lightning 542. So there's only a 20 AR difference, whereas this one is pure physical. And obviously when you add the bundle to that, you're looking at 632. So the Urumi is like way stronger keen than lightning. So it's a case-by-case basis. There's also like the sword spear. I don't have a lightning one, but sword spear has like way more AR on keen. And the scaling does also matter. Like it changes depending on how much dexterity you're rocking. Like if you're rocking like 80 dexterity, chances are the majority of your weapons are going to have better scaling keen. But if you have like around the 55 dexterity soft cap, which is what we have right now, let's look at like at 55 here or lower, most of your weapons will be better lightning. But like I said, it's a case-by-case basis. But if you have low dex, most of the time lightning is better. If you have high dex, most of the time keen is better. But there's always exceptions. But if you're using something that relies a lot on the Ash of War, like let's say Sword Dance on Akiba, you know, Spin Slash, you name it, like a lot of these Ashes of War that don't necessarily like have like a specific affinity with an element like magic or like fire or whatever, any Ash of War like that is going to perform better on an elemental infusion anyway, just because of the way the damage is split. Especially if you have Shard of Alexander on. Especially. Basically, the more you multiply your damage, the more it matters. Keen infusion weapon if you plant and bundle. Otherwise, lightning is the best choice 9 out of 10 times. Not always. Sometimes even with bundles, the lightning one does a little bit more. It depends on the weapon and your level. Like I said, it's really a case-by-case type of deal. Would be nice if we hit that. Or this. Kind of want to keep doing it. Might be it. Yeah, it is. When we said that your Ash of War damage is greater on an infusion, the logic behind that is that when you do an Ash of War, you have a motion value multiplier, which increases basically the amount of damage your weapon does. So that just like makes the defense split like more and more irrelevant every time you have like any sort of multiplier to your damage. So that also applies when you stack like pure damage buffs. We're not talking about like physical damage buff. Like for instance, if you eat an exalted flesh, that only boosts physical damage. It doesn't boost lightning. So you're gonna get more benefit out of pure physical. But when you're looking at something like, for instance, a claw talisman, that increases your jump attack damage. So again, you're gonna benefit more from claw talisman if you actually are using split damage with higher AR, or I should say higher AR, not necessarily split, but if you have higher AR, your claw talisman is going to benefit more. So it does benefit lightning because of that. So like for instance, if you take a look at a strength build, pure physical on a claw talisman, depending on if you land a counter hit or not, the damage is going to be extremely similar even on a counter hit, just because of the way the split damage is calculated with lightning. Except that you won't need to hit that counter hit to get similar damage as a counter hit with strength. So that, like what I told you there, really works with like pretty much any damage boosting talismans for specific attack, except spear talisman only works on physical. Like same thing for these, like these Rotten Insignia, Millicent, they also work on elemental. I know Holy Infusions were bugged for a bit, like they didn't benefit from Shard of Alexander, but I don't know if they patched it or not. So how does this affect fire on heavy build then? That's a good question. Like I said, it's a case-by-case basis. You'll be surprised at sometimes like how much more damage you can get out of your Ash of War, even on a fire infusion. But fire is a bit more tricky because usually, like I said, because your Ash of War damage, for instance, is calculated off of the one-handed AR, fire usually still has better scaling when two-handed, just like heavy. So that by itself makes your AR lower on fire, and on top of that, fire has less scaling basically fire has less scaling one-handed and doesn't benefit from the strength modifier from two-handing. So you have like kind of two minus going there. So basically on the same stat investment, your dex build is just going to have like straight up higher AR than fire. And then you add on top of that the fact that everyone that has like any build is going to have like, take a look at my fire defense and damage negation here. My fire defense is at 186. Look at all the others. 135, 135, 145, 186, 127, 141. So the 186 like is like a sore thumb. It just sticks out. Why? Because fire defense scales off of vigor. So everyone has crazy fire defense. So that also like very highly diminishes the amount of damage you're actually going to do. So it gets more tricky because of that. But then on strength, you have the advantage of having, what's it called? Flame Strike. When you had Flame Strike on top of your weapon, you add 80 flat AR, but fire AR. That 80 flat helps mitigate like that defense penetration kind of problem. So sometimes you can do a lot more damage if you just fire Flame Strike than if you just lightning. And then if you compare that, like, if you compare your lightning with, like, your lightning strike to buff your weapon, lightning strike is not as usable, like, in a real fight. So lightning over frost blade. I mean, frost and blade are a different topic. Like, frost and blade will net you like always the lowest damage per hit, and then you basically need to hit the proc in order for that to make sense. So like, there's no point in rocking any status if you don't intend on building around the status proc. For instance, poison is best when the latency is worse. We all know that. Same thing for rot. It's just a no-brainer. When you can't hit someone with normal roll catches, you just apply status. Same for sleep and madness. Those are like the ideal scenarios, or the more likely scenarios you're going to use them. But you could still build a full build around like poison, status proc, and then have like the kindred rock exaltation, the mushroom head, and calculate your damage that way. But you're still going to need to proc before your big damage kicks in. And so you have to calculate, if I get like, let's say 3 hits on my opponent right away, how much damage do I lose on these 3 hits versus how much damage do I gain? Let's just heal up here and let's just focus on this one here. I definitely want some. Okay, well, we're safe here. I'm gonna restart the topic of elemental infusions after this. Let's use this. Let's use this. There you go. Actually, let's do that too. Why not? Okay, this guy is shitting it. We're in no rush here. And the host is laggy too, so be careful. just tanked it. I think because of the latency, we're gonna just forget about the whip here. Let's try to kill the Phantom while the host is busy. Okay, so going back to our topic of status damage versus elemental versus physical. I think we need to touch on like physical first before talking about status, because a lot of time like your arcane build is going to be overrated simply because of the fact that you can have extremely good status buildup on a physical build, on physical weapons. I mean, the best example I can give you, like straight up, like the Raptor's Talon, they have like an insane 60 bleed, and you can bundle them. When you make an arcane build, either you're gonna make your weapon, like if you want some bleed proc, either you're gonna make them bleed, have like innate bleed, and then infuse them with poison, or like have occult. Thing with either of those infusions is you can't bundle these. So the moment you have a weapon that already has like bleed on them and then you bundle them, usually you're gonna have more damage and more or the same amount of status proc than your arcane counterpart. Where arcane makes sense is like, you know, in specific cases like weapons that don't necessarily have a status proc, when you build around, let's say, like crazy fast status build up, and then you have like all the like the damage boosts that kick in right away. There's a lot of combination of arcane that can make like specific combos pretty deadly